Education and Culture meeting. Today we're going to be talking about our libraries, something in which Councilmember Jawando, who is our lead for libraries, expresses his regret. He really wanted to be here today. He's got a number of initiatives. I know he's met with Ms. Vassallo a number of times and toured a number of libraries, and he unfortunately has stomach bug, and so we wish him a speedy recovery. So we're going to go ahead and move forward with going through our analysis of the library budget, but did just want to say that I know you guys had a fantastic program. I think it was last week, Libraries at the Dark, at the Library After Dark Gala. Unfortunately, I had 3 other events that evening, but I know that Councilmember Jawando was there at that and had a chance to speak there. So certainly our love for libraries and all the great things that are being done there. I know that the lead has also expressed an interest in having a continued conversation about the future of our libraries in the county, and so we'll certainly be taking that up outside of the context of budget in a chance when we can talk about the great things that are being done innovatively in our libraries, but also about the workforce development that's happening in our libraries that a lot of people don't realize and understand, and how we can best continue to support that. So thank you very much for all the great work that you're doing to continue to innovate and expand the opportunities that are available for our constituents. So I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Smith to walk us through the packets, but did want to give an opportunity for Ms. Vassallo if she wanted to make any opening remarks regarding our libraries.
Okay, this is Anita Vassallo, Acting Director, Montgomery County Public Libraries. So we're very pleased with the CE's allocation to us, kept us pretty much where we were. It does mean that some initiatives that we'd like to see coming up in the future, we may need to hold back on a little bit, but generally we'll be able to provide the same level of service, if not better, including materials, our electronic resources, which we've picked up some fantastic things this year for our constituents, and our staffing is going to stay about level. So we think that things look fairly good for us for this year. I know that Councilmember Jawando has an initiative to help replace some hours at 2 of our branches that serve communities that could really use this additional help. So we hope that that goes through. And thank both of you for your attention to libraries and to what we do to serve the community.
Well, thank you very much, Acting Director Vassallo. Do we have anybody from the executive side that could let us know on the status of the director search for libraries? No, that's fine. We'll ask it. Oh, Ms. Vassallo? Yeah.
To my knowledge, there are 2 candidates for the directorship of libraries, one of whom is myself. We completed going before a community engagement panel last week, and I believe what is happening next is direct interviews with the CE. Mine is scheduled for May 7th.
You heard it here first, folks, so that's great. Thank you very much for that update. Yeah, no, that's great. All right, Mr. Smith.
Sure. So, as Ms. Vassallo noted, this is a same level of service budget, and so the fiscal 20 recommendation keeps the public service hours the same for all branches as fiscal 19. And in a moment, we'll get to the memo from Mr. Jawando and Mr. Rice regarding other branches. Generally, the budget is not expected to grow as much, partly due to department-wide lapse, which we'll get to in a few minutes, but that's keeping the budgets lower than it could be otherwise, which is helping to maintain the public service hours. So one item that is noted in this budget is that the Wheaton Library and Recreation Center will open this year. So the library's budget does include an additional 3.5 FTEs. That's above what the current complement is at the interim library. And that number is offset by lapse that's already in the budget. But once that library opens, they will move their staff up, and it'll move forward as expected in fiscal 20.
Can I just stop you there? I just have to say, and it's really a very cool thing. You know, Council President Navarro, it's certainly in her district, and she's been fighting for this for a very long time, so congratulations on, no, seriously, you had to fight for it, and you should be recognized for your advocacy. But this is a library I grew up going to. I grew up, and I remember every single time walking into the lower level and then going up to the top level, every single time I had a project or something that I had to do for school. That was my home library. And for a young man who had a lot of resources at home, who had parents who were able to buy Encyclopedia Britannica, that dates me, but it still was a resource that was incredibly important to my success in school and my future success in life. And that's what it means to folks. And so understanding that folks who may not have the resources that I have to have a library like this, and understanding the diversity that continues to be in the Wheaton and greater Silver Spring area as a whole, who are going to utilize this facility is just phenomenal. And so for us to be able to continue to meet the needs for other little Craig Rices and others who are coming about, who are going into this facility, who are going to do God knows what at the end, it's just tremendous. I mean, it really, really is, and it speaks volumes that I can still remember the exact layout of that library and what it looked like and the times that I went there. And so that's the impact that we have on our communities. And so it's great to be able to finally have that come to fruition for your community. Council President Navarro is just absolutely phenomenal, so it's a great thing for us. We should be really celebrating, absolutely.
Well, I'm going to go down memory lane. What's interesting to me is that I mean, as a young mother, taking my daughter for story time in the little, the children's section upstairs in that little room. My daughter will be 27 this year. So there is no doubt that, this is a library that people just loved so much. And every time I drive by there, just in awe of how cool it's all going to be. And then with the recreation center all connected and all that, it's just incredible. I mean, it's going to make such a huge difference on so many folks, But you're right, and it's interesting because I oftentimes reflect on, I would hear my parents make comments if we would drive, either through a town or an area, and they would say, "I'll remember when this used to look like this," and its kids would be like, "Whatever." Now I'm doing that, like, yep. "Oh, I remember when this used to have this other thing," but it's all great because it's all about progress for this community. So I appreciate all this.
Very good. In fiscal 19, the executive recommended adding some money to the library services to the public. 50,000 of it was for safety and security in Silver Spring. So that funding continues this year. And on page 3, council staff notes what he received from executive staff regarding that. And that is weekday hours that the security is there. It's providing needed services to free up resources for the library staff to do what they're there for. And then also during the weekends, the Montgomery County Police also has some money in their budget to provide overtime to police to provide security for that.
Can I actually ask a question on that? Because I did want to know, I know that we are having issues with some of our common space areas close to Progress Place, and I know that Silver Spring Library isn't far. I've been to Silver Spring Library a number of times, and I know that some of our homeless population are frequenting the library. Are we having any issues with any of our libraries, and should we be concerned about what we may need to do in terms of stepping up additional resources for our libraries?
Well, we continue to look at safety and security for both our staff and our customers as a prime priority for the library system. There are certain libraries where we receive a higher level of the number of incident reports, often with behavior that is not acceptable according to our guidelines within the space. We wish to have the space be comfortable and safe for everyone who enters, and of course, libraries are open to all people as long as you abide by our guidelines. So last year when we evaluated the numbers of incidents at Silver Spring and the amount of time that library staff, not necessarily trained for interventions in these types of situations, was spending trying to keep things under control, we decided that finding the money in our budget for a full-time security guard would be a good idea, and it has made a difference with the staff there. Now, the number of incidents does continue to increase. Whether this is directly as a result of individuals from Progress Place coming over to the library to use the facilities, I can't say. There are many, many issues that impact the urban district of Silver Spring. I have had a conversation with Captain Montgomery, the commander of the 3rd District, and his lieutenant, to see how we can best work with both the police and other agencies in the county to put mechanisms in place that might kind of correct this behavior. There are other libraries where we are also monitoring the number of incidents that occur, Rockville being one, Germantown being the 3rd, and we will move forward if we need to with some increase in security. We're also working with county security with Mr. Gordy to do security assessments of all of our branches, and then we'll be looking to make improvements that are suggested by county security. I'm sure you all are aware there have been some very unfortunate incidents, not here in Montgomery County, but across the country. So we have our eye on that continually.
Yeah, and I think that if an assessment's going to be made, again, I don't have any recommendations for this, so Bruce, you can relax. But it's okay. You're okay. Gotcha. So it's Deborah for this one. So Deborah, you can relax. Don't worry. I'm not going to add anything right now. But I do think that with Mike Gordy, and if he's doing an assessment, if you could forward that to the committee, we'd really like to see what that would look like, so that if we have a rollout, certainly it's something where I know that there are other issues that are going on in these communities anyway, and so ways in which we can tie together. There's been talk of us with a new chief and addressing community policing as a whole and how we're going to approach this maybe a little bit differently. So there's all this talk about all these things that are going on, so we'd like to coordinate that with our libraries to make sure we can give you the right support necessary. So that would be great.
Thank you.
Sorry, thank you.
And also under the library service to the public are the public service hours, so I will turn it to you, since Mr. Jawando is not here to talk about your recommendation.
Excellent. So we've known for a while that when we tried to bring our libraries back to their full service complement, that we left out two. And so from that perspective, I really think that it would be important for us to bring these back up to the same parity as our other libraries, both Damascus, that we know is in an area that continues to struggle in terms of their kind of recognition that they are a very engaged and involved community that continues to utilize these spaces. You know, our great co-location between the senior center and the library works incredibly well when it comes to young children who are coming for story time and get read to by some of the seniors from the senior center there in Damascus. It's just a great setup. And so it's one in which I think, again, would behoove us to make sure that we're adding those additional service hours. And so I think, which page is it on is our...
Sorry, the memo wasn't received before this went to print.
I'm sorry.
But
it's,
it will be added
right,
for
exactly.
the council's packet.
Right. So Ms. Vassallo, if we're looking at, I think it's 8 hours for each one, for each in total.
It's 11 total.
It's 11 total. I'm sorry. Thank you. And so that would be combined. Thank you. It's the 11 total for Damascus and for Long Branch that give us the standardizing of the hours that we see at all of our other libraries. And so I'd like to move that in Councilmember Jawando's absence. And so it amounts to $215,788 on the reconciliation list.
I have a question.
Yep.
Sure, and go ahead.
Does that align with, so is this to align with the recommendation of FED for Wheaton Library as well, or is this, which one is this? This is
Damascus and Long
Okay, Damascus and Long Branch.
Right.
Because there was also I think there was also a proposal on FED for the recreation center piece of the Wheaton Library, and I know there was some conversation about whether then the library also had to take into consideration extending those hours or not. I don't know if that was something that was looked at or not.
Staff will look into that. I only learned of that as I was coming to this meeting. My understanding for the Wheaton Library is the hours they proposed is the same that they have for other large regional libraries, and they would be looking at that. But staff will get back to
Friday,
you.
11 to open the rec center until 11, I believe, Friday and Saturday or something to that effect.
Okay, in that instance, then the rec center would be open longer than the library based on the hours that are here.
Which is fine, I just didn't know if there was some kind of, I mean, I don't have enough,
Yeah.
information to do that, but if we could just take a look at that, I guess.
That's
Just-
something, we would need to
It's a
look at it,
logistics
because
issue.
this is the first time I'm hearing of this. In the facility, the library is its own separate space and does not need to be open when the recreation center is open. Vice versa, it doesn't work.
Okay, because I think that's what staff was trying to look into, and they weren't sure about the logistics of it. All right.
We can close off our part of it. They
Right.
can't close off their part.
Right, okay, so then I guess it doesn't really have to.
Okay. All right. And the other thing we'll note, that based on the memo that Mr. Jawando and Mr. Rice sent out, the library closing, or the hours will correspond with the reopening of the Long Branch Library, because that's due for
Correct.
refurbishment this year.
That's right.
And so that will be added to the rec list per
Right.
the committee's recommendation.
Excellent. Thank you.
And then the only other real budget issue, and we kind of talked about this briefly at the beginning, is that the libraries is expected to have almost $3.6 million in lapse this year. That's an increase of 1.7. This isn't a department-wide hold. I mean, the library is going to be doing everything they can with OHR and OMB to fill those positions. The reality is it's just taking time, both in outflow for retirements and other decisions, and inflow, just getting staff in. So this believes is a realistic budget. It's not a requirement for them to achieve this lapse, but staff thinks that's pretty high. And there's notes based on what we've received from libraries, but there's 68 positions vacant right now, and they've been averaging pretty high there for the last couple of years. And so as Mr. Rice mentioned, maybe once we know who the new director is, and in the fall, we could have a larger conversation just regarding the staffing and expectations for that in libraries.
Yeah, and one of the things I've had conversations with people within our Health and Human Services Department to talk specifically about hiring and understand that there are some backlogs within our Human Resources Office as well. And so hopefully with having a director in place at some point soon, that will help to expedite some of the process. I will just say that I know, just anecdotally, that as we see a continued aging workforce, we need to make sure that we're prepared. And so, because that does affect all of the staffing and resources that are there that libraries provide for our constituency. So it's something that we'll definitely pay close attention to. And as we maybe get to the fall, we can have a conversation about that before the next budget. So if there are things that we need to do financially, we'll be prepared to be able to commit to those as well.
Sure. And then staff will also include, as you recommended at the beginning, a larger conversation about the future of libraries and direction.
Exactly.
And again, I think with a new director, hopefully appointed by then, that will provide the ample time to have that conversation.
Absolutely.
So with the operating budget, staff has no other comments and recommends approval of the executive's recommendation. And we'll pause there if there's any more comments regarding that before we move on to capital projects.
Without objection.
Okay.
All right.
There are 3 capital projects that were recommended for amendment. The first one's the 21st Century Library Project. There are kind of 2 major amendments to this. The first one is a realignment of operating expenses being moved to library's budget. It's $118,000 a year, and so that's a reduction in the CIP. It doesn't change the service, it just realigns the budget with where it should be for these ongoing expenses that OMB believes should be in the library's operating budget, not the CIP. And in addition, there's a recommendation for a $500,000 reduction because of budget, needing to align the budget and reconcile it. This would cut some projects or delay them. The council considered this last year and also approved a similar reduction because of the operating budget needs. Council staff recommends approval of the amended PDF as submitted by the executive.
Yeah, and I think going into a full cycle CIP this fall, we'll be able to make adjustments as necessary. Again, once the new director is on board, once we know the vision of libraries, then we'll be able to restructure if necessary to make sure we're doing the puts and takes that are needed to keep us on track with whatever we're doing from an innovative perspective. So I don't want advocates to think that this somehow is the final straw and we're fully delaying. This is temporary until we can take a look at our full-year CIP and talk to a new director about what the future of our libraries will be and make adjustments accordingly.
And just to clarify, that reduction is only for fiscal 20. It is restored in 21 to 25, or 24 in the budget. But to that point, staff understands, and we can continue that in the biennial CIP. The next one, with no objection on that one, okay. The library refurbishment level of effort, this is what we were just talking about for Long Branch. We're going through a cycle where we're refurbishing every library. Hopefully through the cycle, we're doing 2 a year now based on cost. Staff on page 7 and 8 list the projects that are currently in the pipeline. I'm not going to go through each of those. The recommended PDF accelerates some costs that were needed in fiscal 18, but doesn't change the delivery of refurbishment projects that are in the pipeline, and also adds $200,000 to the CIP for state aid that was received, reduces GO bonds for that equivalent. And it stated clearly, the number or the dates that are in here are subject to change as any construction project, but these are the best dates that we have now of where we're at for the branches in the pipeline for the refurbishment. Sorry, council staff recommends approval of the amended PDF. Sure. And then the last one is the Wheaton Library and Community Recreation Center. That was, apologies, sorry, the 200,000 was added to the last PDF for GO bonds. This, I've got my projects mixed up. So the last one, the executive was recommending adding 200,000 in GO bonds because that was needed. The Wheaton Recreation Library is an addition for state aid, so that was where the state aid came in. Staff apologizes on that. So this one is just a reflection that they received an additional 200,000 in state aid, and that's why it's amended. The project will be delivered as expected.
Without objection.
Yep.
Okay.
So,
All right.
And then we have 2 other items, small items real quick, but we're done with libraries if our colleagues want to.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ms. Fasalo.
All right. So staff will just go ahead and jump in?
Yep.
Okay. So item number 1 is the Tacoma Park Library annual payments, NDA. This is a tax duplication issue in the county code. The law gives the specific equation that is needed. This is a placeholder until we know what the actual assessments are in the city of Tacoma Park. The recommendation this year is $188,329. Staff recommends approval.
Without objection. All right.
And then the last item is the historical activities non-departmental account. And this used to contain more, but now it's just the the Montgomery County Historical Society. So Mr. Logan is here. I'll invite him up. Appreciate his assistance in providing responses for this. The executive's recommendation for this is $150,000. It's an increase of $15,000 from last year. There's been a steady increase to make up for lost time during the recession. And then Mr. Logan is here to answer any questions you may have about this organization, but it's an NDA that's done through a contract like other ones.
Yeah, well, it's certainly important for us to continue making sure we preserve a lot of our historical items. As the council president and I were sheltering in place along with others the other day for a tornado, we ran across some documents
Treasures.
downstairs in our bomb shelter. No, I mean, this is a true story. And so it really does talk and highlight about the need for us to continue. I mean, we saw everything from analytical data to periodicals and all kinds of things from a long time, from decades ago. And so it really does say something about the need for us to continue to make sure that we are preserving our history. And so, I'm in full support. I think it's a great idea for us to continue the great work that's going on by MCHS. So, excellent. All right. So without objection. All right.
And we're
Excellent. And we're adjourned. Thank you for your great work, man.